It can take a really long time, sometimes even a whole lifetime, for people to truly understand how their mind works. And that's what the whole spiritual journey is about. You can try doing deep spiritual practices, long meditations, even take drugs, and maybe you'll get a glimpse of what it's like. But you won't be able to stay in that space permanently until you learn how to make peace with your mind and understand your relationship with it. So what's your relationship with your mind? You have one. Did you realize that? You've got a mind that's constantly thinking and creating thoughts. That's just what it does. It's like an ocean with waves. The waves are part of the ocean. They rise up, form, and then disappear back into it. That's how your thoughts work. They come up in your mind, which is like the ocean, and then they fade away. Sometimes those thoughts keep popping back up. Sometimes they drift through quickly. Some thoughts feel good, others can be really tough. But that's your relationship with your mind. Thoughts come, thoughts go. What does that mean? You are the one inside, the conscious being, who is aware of all this. You're the one who knows what I just said is true. Everyone knows it deep down, but most people don't realize they know. So what's the difference between knowing something and being fully aware of it? That's a really important distinction. When something grabs your attention so strongly, when you're so caught up in it, it's like you lose yourself in it. It's like being so focused on something, you forget you're the one watching it. Let's say you're watching something happen. As it unfolds, you're there, aware that you're watching it. But if something happens that's really intense or dangerous, like a dog running toward you and you're afraid of dogs, at first, you're aware of the dog coming. Your mind says, "Oh, there's a dog," and you feel a little fear building. Then, all of a sudden, when the dog gets close, panic hits, and now you're fully lost in the fear. Ever had that feeling? When you're so scared, you're overwhelmed, thinking, "I'm going to die." In that moment, you're not watching anymore. You're fully inside the fear. But how do you know you got pulled into it? Because eventually you calm down and come back to being yourself again. Have you ever not come back from a tough moment? Probably not, because if you hadn't, you wouldn't be here right now listening to this. But there are people who don't come back. They get stuck in those moments, completely fixated, traumatized. No joke. There are children who've seen horrible things like car accidents or other tragedies and they don't bounce back. Where did they go? Are they still aware? Yes, but their mind is locked on that one event. It's like their whole consciousness got swallowed up by that trauma and they can't pull away from it. We all have traumas, right? You probably have some too. But they don't always take over your life. Yet, there are certain thoughts that stick around, aren't there? You know the ones. Those nagging, persistent thoughts you can't shake. Why did she say that to me? What did she mean by that? I can't believe she said that. When you're lost in those thoughts, that's all you can focus on. You're not fully there anymore. You can't focus on work. You can't enjoy a party. You're just stuck in that loop, completely sucked into the thought. But who's the one noticing this? Who is the you that says, "I'm so lost in my thoughts"? That you is the real you, your consciousness, your soul. It's the part of you that gets pulled away and distracted by all these thoughts, whether they're negative or even really positive. Ever had a moment where you're so in love, so excited about someone that you can't think about anything else? "Oh my God, I love her so much, I can't wait to see her again." Try doing math in that state. Can't do it, right? The difference is, you like being lost in those positive thoughts. But when it's negative, it's torture. Why did he say that to me? I'll never love again. I can't believe this happened. You don't want to stay in that place, but those are just waves of thoughts in your mind. The problem is, you get pulled into them and can't pull yourself out. And the more you get sucked into those negative thoughts, the stronger they grip you. Sometimes you even start identifying with them. You say things like, "I'm not happy, I'm miserable, I can't live like this." But those are just thoughts, and they're not the real I. That's not you. The real I is the one who notices the thoughts, the one who's always watching. Your consciousness, that's the real you. It's steady, always there, while your thoughts come and go. One day you're thinking, I'm happy, and the next day, I'm upset. But it's the same you observing both feelings, right? Think about it. Yesterday, were you watching your thoughts? A year ago? How about 10 years ago? When you looked in the mirror 10 years ago, your body didn't look like it does now, but the one looking at the reflection was still you. When you were 5 years old, you had a 5-year-old's thoughts and emotions, and you looked at a 5-year-old's body in the mirror. But the you looking was the same as now. That's your essence, your consciousness. The important thing to remember is that you are the subject, the one who's conscious. All those thoughts and experiences, they're just objects of your consciousness. There are endless objects to be aware of, but the one constant is you, the one who's always watching. How many things can you be aware of in your life? A ridiculous number, 700 billion trillion different objects, thoughts, feelings, and experiences. But here's the thing, there's only one consciousness, just one. There's one you behind all of that, one conscious being, and it's been there the whole time. It's the same you that's been watching all these different things, whether it's thoughts, feelings, or whatever is going on around you. Think about it. Your thoughts aren't the same as they were last week, or even a few hours ago. Something happened. A close call in traffic. Someone said something, or maybe you thought they said something, or you're worried that someday someone might say something. Am I wrong? This is what we're talking about when we talk about spirituality. Why? Because that consciousness, that self, that's what spirit is. Call it whatever you want, your soul, your essence. But it's the thing inside you that's aware of the thoughts that get created in your mind. And it's also aware of something else, the emotions that come from your heart. Here's a big distinction. Your mind doesn't create emotions, it creates thoughts. So, when your heart hurts, when you're feeling emotional pain, you don't point to your head and say, "My heart hurts," do you? No. You point to your head when you're overwhelmed with thoughts and say, "My thoughts are driving me crazy." But when your heart hurts, it's a different feeling. It's like a different energy. If someone tells me, "My heart hurts so bad, I feel like I'm dying," I listen. But let me tell you something. I don't do therapy, and I'm not here to make you feel better about your problems. People sometimes reach out wanting to talk about their pain, thinking I'm going to help them work through it. But I'm not going to do that. Why? Not because I don't care, not because I don't have time, but because the question that really matters isn't how long you've been in pain or what triggered it. The question I'm going to ask you is, how do you know? How do you know your heart hurts? That's not the question a therapist would ask. A therapist would ask you about the breakup, how long you've felt this way, or if you've experienced this before. They're going to guide you through your emotions like a nice person. But I'm not here for that. I'm going to ask you, how do you know your heart hurts? And why is that the most important question anyone could ask you? Because you are not the hurting heart. You are the one aware of the hurting heart. There's a difference. Were you ever aware of your heart not hurting before? Of course you were. Maybe when you were in love, you felt amazing, right? And who felt that love? Same you. The same conscious being inside of you was aware of both the love and the pain. There's only one of you in there. You are aware of your thoughts, your emotions, and everything you take in through your senses. All those things come and go, but the you that's observing them, that's the real you. You're always there, watching it all. The problem is, when life gets intense, you lose yourself in it. You don't stay grounded, clear, or centered in who you really are. Ever heard of being established in the seat of self? That's when you stay in your core, fully aware that you're just watching everything, whether it's a hurt heart or a joyful one. It's not about thinking it, because thinking is still just your mind at work. Imagine looking at a picture. You don't have to think, oh, I'm looking at a picture. You just see it, no commentary needed. The same goes for your emotions. If you're truly centered, you don't need to narrate or get lost in the feeling. You just notice it, like noticing a picture. But here's the catch. Most people can't do that. Why? Because the emotions or thoughts are too overwhelming. They're so powerful that they completely hijack your focus, pulling you into them so deeply that everything else fades away. And here's the thing. Whatever you focus on becomes your world. The stuff you're not focused on. It doesn't exist for you in that moment, even though it's still there. Think about it. There are galaxies, stars, and a whole universe out there, right? But do you ever walk around thinking about them? Not really, because your attention is caught up in what's happening right here, right now. You get distracted by what's unfolding in front of you, your thoughts, your emotions, what you see and hear around you. But even when you're distracted, you're still there. Your consciousness hasn't gone anywhere. I've told you this before, and it's the truth. It's not about finding God or finding your true self. You've always had it. You just keep leaving. You are already seated in the highest place, the same place Christ sat, the same place any enlightened master sat. You're there right now, this very moment. But what good does that do if your focus is always somewhere else, on the little things pulling you away? Stop chasing what's happening around you and getting caught up in it. That's how you lose touch with your higher self. Stay seated in who you truly are and stop letting distractions take you away from that. All the peace, clarity, and truth you need is already within you. You just have to stop leaving it behind. You spend most of your time focusing on your own thoughts and emotions, right? Whose thoughts? Yours. Whose emotions? Yours. It's not like you're sitting there worrying about what the billions of other people on this planet are feeling or thinking. You might care about others, but you're still caught up in what's happening inside you. You focus on your thoughts, your feelings, your problems. But here's the thing. If you can step back, even for a moment, and feel that separation, you'll have taken a huge leap in your spiritual growth. You'll be able to experience what the great spiritual masters talk about, like when Christ said, "My Father and I are one." That's cosmic consciousness, where everything, the whole universe, is part of you. When you touch that, you feel like you're expanding in all directions, like you're connected to everything. That's where the great ones like Christ go. And believe it or not, you're already there. Right now, your consciousness has that potential. You have the ability to be aware of everything around you, the whole universe. But instead, you get pulled down. You get distracted by a single thought, like, "He doesn't love me anymore," and suddenly your world shrinks to that one idea. You stop being this vast consciousness, and instead, you become a person obsessed with one little thought. That's what happens when you let your mind take over. You go from being capable of experiencing everything to being stuck in a loop of worry or sadness. Here's the real key that most people don't realize. Distraction is the most important thing holding you back in your spiritual growth. Your consciousness can easily be distracted. One moment you're reading a book, then you hear a noise or have a random thought, and suddenly your mind is somewhere else. You turn the page and realize you didn't actually read a single word. Why? Because your thoughts distracted you. Your consciousness got pulled away. Consciousness can get distracted and pulled in different directions. That's what happens all the time, whether it's by a thought, a noise, or something you see. When we talk about witness consciousness, that means being able to sit back and watch all of this happen without getting lost in it. Someone even asked me recently, is becoming established in the seat of self the same as enlightenment? It's a great question, but the answer is no. It's not the same thing. Becoming established in the seat of self means reaching a permanent state of witness consciousness. What does that mean? It means you're always present, always aware, but you're not caught up in what's happening. You're back here, noticing everything, but still separate from it. You're the one watching your thoughts and feelings, not the one being dragged around by them. That's what being seated in consciousness means. You're steady, always present, observing everything but not getting lost in it. It's about being aware of your thoughts, feelings, and the world around you, but staying grounded in the you that's behind all of that. When you say I, you're not talking about the whole universe. You mean me, the person who's watching her right now. Do you understand? That sounds like a deep spiritual place to be. And yes, it is. It's a wonderful state. I really hope you can experience it. That's what true witness consciousness is. Krishna referred to it as objective observation. It means you can sit there and observe everything that's happening, both inside and outside of you, without getting involved. However, that's not the same as enlightenment. Enlightenment is when you're firmly seated in that state of awareness. And not only are you observing what's going on, but you're not being pulled into it. You're so calm and at peace with everything that nothing can disturb you. Even when your mind says, "Oh no, what should I do?" those thoughts just pass through without affecting you. You simply let them come and go, like clouds passing by in the sky. I've shared before that a great master, Ramakrishna, who was fully enlightened, was asked, "Does an enlightened person ever feel anger?" And do you know what he said? "Yes, but it's like writing on water." Some people ask me, "Are you saying writing or riding?" I'm saying writing, like writing on paper, except imagine trying to write on water instead of paper. No one would be able to read it because it disappears right away. What difference does it make if you write on water? None. It shows up, but it quickly vanishes without leaving a trace. In the same way, emotions like anger, love, or fear appear and just pass right through an enlightened person. It doesn't affect them. They might say, "Oh, there's anger," or "Hello, fear," but none of it sticks or pulls them in. They can continue doing whatever they were doing before without being distracted. Once you're established in this state, your lower self, the part of you that you're watching, no longer pulls you in. People often talk about the higher self and the lower self. The higher self is you, the awareness, and the lower self is everything you're aware of. The higher self isn't just the good part of you, and the lower self isn't just the bad part. Both the good and the bad are things you're observing from that higher state of awareness without getting involved. This is the essence of non-duality, seeing everything as one without dividing it into good or bad. Now you're starting to establish your sense of self, your true self. You're not getting pulled down into the world's distractions and problems. You still interact with the world, but you don't get dragged down by it. And when you're not being pulled down, something incredible happens. It's like an upward pull, a feeling that starts to lift you up. It's hard to describe, but it's very real. Just as negativity and worries used to pull you down, this upward force pulls your consciousness upward, as if something from behind is gently drawing you back into itself. You might have felt this during meditation or in special moments, like when you see a breathtaking sunset and you feel a surge of energy rising within you. This feeling comes from beyond the heart and the mind, and it pulls you upward. As this pull gets stronger, it can feel a bit scary. This is what Christ meant when he said, "You must die to be reborn." He wasn't talking about physical death, but about letting go of your sense of individuality, the idea that you are separate from everything else. When you release that, you are pulled upward. This pull is God lifting you up, and it's called the ascent. Great spiritual masters have experienced this. Meher Baba once said, "My consciousness was like a drop of water, separate and aware. Then that drop fell into the ocean." Imagine taking a drop of water and dropping it into the ocean. Can you find that drop again? No, because it has merged with the ocean, becoming one with it. That's what happens to your consciousness when you reach enlightenment. So don't go around saying, "I'm enlightened, I had this amazing experience." That's not real enlightenment. Enlightenment is when your individual self merges into the greater whole, into oneness. That's where Buddha, Christ, and other great spiritual figures went. They didn't just reach a high state. They merged completely with the divine. What remains here on earth is still a physical body, but the person inside is no longer a separate drop. They have become the entire ocean. Someone once asked Meher Baba, who was a fully enlightened master, "Who are you?" He replied, "I existed before anything was created. I will still be here after everything disappears. There has never been a time when I wasn't, and there will never be a time when I won't be. That's the essence of who you are too." Namaste. So guess what? That's who you are right now. That's where you already sit. I might be a Jewish yogi, but I love Christ's teachings. Christ said, "As I sit by the throne of my Father," which means a seat of consciousness, "so you shall sit by my throne. And the things I do, you will do, and even greater things." Did you know he said that? Christ was showing us that we are the same as him. You don't have to do anything special to reach that place because you're already there, seated in that same divine consciousness. You have to stop leaving your true self. Now you see why I keep saying that? You have to stop leaving. Why do you leave? Because you get pulled down into the problems and worries of your personal self. He doesn't like me. Why don't people like me? I don't want to go. I'll fail. What if things go wrong? It never stops, does it? Oh no, I'm getting older. Look at the lines on my face, my veins. What's happening to me? It goes on, but is it fun? No, it's exhausting. In the story of Genesis, they talk about the fall from the Garden of Eden. This is what it means. If you get that, you'll understand more than most people about what the fall from the garden really is. The garden represents the perfect state where you are always connected to God. Adam and Eve were there, one with God, living in harmony, experiencing life fully, but without getting lost in it. Then they fell. And what did they fall into? The ego, the sense of being separate. They became aware of themselves in a different way. I am this body, this person. But that's not who you really are. You are not just this body. You are the entire universe, just like there are countless bodies, insects, and living beings all around you. But when you forget this, it's like falling from the garden. And what does the Bible say after the fall? Now you must work by the sweat of your brow. Doesn't that sound familiar? You work so hard trying to make people like you, trying to be accepted, to get married, to have your children behave the way you want, or even to keep your hair from frizzing. Anyone else doing that? Working hard, trying to make everything just right every single minute. There are lots of teachers, like therapists, who help you cope with life from where you are. They can teach you how to get what you want. So at least when you're working hard, you achieve something. But that's not what enlightened beings teach. They don't teach you how to fix everything down here. They teach you something much bigger. How to stop falling from the garden in the first place. They show you how to stay happy and at peace, no matter what's going on. After we fell from the garden, after we lost that ecstasy, peace and joy of being one with God, we forgot that we are still one with God. You are God. As Christ said, "My Father and I are one." But instead of remembering that, we try to learn how to cope with life down here. People teach you how to manage your expectations. Don't expect too much. There will be good times and bad times. That's life. But enlightened beings say, no, that's not the truth. There is only joy, only peace, only ecstasy. In the ancient Indian scriptures, they refer to God as Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means eternal, Chit means conscious, and Ananda means ecstasy. Guess what? That's not just the name for God, it's the name for your true self. You are eternal conscious ecstasy. Not this idea of you have to experience pain to appreciate happiness, or don't expect too much and you'll be happier. No, you can feel pure love all the time. You are love. You can feel so much love that it fills you completely, every moment. But nobody tells you this because they don't know. Teachers can only teach what they understand, and most people don't know the truth of who they really are. Parents and society teach you how to cope, but not how to be fully alive and full of love at all times, because they don't know that's possible. But it is. You are that eternal, joyful, conscious love, always. So what we're talking about here is the experience of being truly connected to that deeper part of yourself, and you already know what that can feel like. You wouldn't be here listening to this if you hadn't felt it before. At some point in your life, you've had moments of pure joy, even ecstasy. Think about when you saw something breathtaking, or when you held your child for the first time. Or maybe it was a hug, one of those hugs where you feel so much love from someone you've missed for a long time. In that moment, you just melt. Has anyone ever felt that? It's such a beautiful feeling, but it's not easy to melt, is it? Why not? Because your mind is always saying, be careful, don't let go too fast, you might get hurt. In other words, we don't melt easily because we're already melted into our minds. We're so caught up in our thoughts, our fears, and the walls we've built around ourselves that it's hard to let go. But sometimes we do melt. Maybe it happens when you watch a stunning sunset, or when a piece of music sweeps you away. Music has that power, doesn't it? It can take you out of yourself for a while, but then, after the song ends, you come right back to your usual thoughts and worries. We all have this ability to stop focusing on ourselves for a little while. You might call it entertainment. When you watch a good movie for those 2 hours, you're not stuck in your own head. But as soon as the movie's over, all that mental clutter is waiting for you, just like it never left. In India, there's this belief that if you bathe in the Ganges River, a very holy river, it purifies you. It's said that all your impurities and bad karma wash away. But the spiritual masters tell a funny story. They say that when you go down to bathe in the Ganges, all your problems and worries jump up onto a branch above you, like they're waiting. You feel all clean and pure when you come out of the water, but as soon as you leave, those problems jump right back on you. It's a funny way to explain how our issues don't just disappear easily, even after a spiritual experience. They have a way of coming back. Now, when it comes to spirituality, the first thing to understand is that you are the most incredible being to ever walk the earth. Do you find yourself beautiful? Well, you are far beyond that. You are such a great and magnificent being that it's almost impossible to comprehend. If you've evolved to the point where you are a human being, you're capable of reaching that higher state of realization. Every single human being is capable of discovering who they truly are. What does this mean? It means realizing the true nature of the self, or what some call God realization. This is the goal of spirituality, to know that you are not just a body or a mind, but something infinitely greater. Every human being can reach this state of self-realization, of fully understanding who they are at their core. You have that potential, and it's always been there, waiting for you to discover it. You might be thinking, if that's who I really am, if I'm supposed to feel this ecstasy inside all the time, it sounds like it would be pretty great. And you'd be right. It would be amazing to feel that joy constantly. Jesus even talked about this when he said, "Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." What he meant is that we don't just get our happiness from things outside of us, like food or material stuff, the bread. There's a deeper spiritual energy flowing inside of you. It's that energy, that spirit, that truly feeds you and makes you feel whole and complete within yourself. Every one of us has that inside. You might say, but I feel depressed. Here's the thing. You're not depressed. You're just watching a mind that's caught up in depression. Can you see the difference? The real you, the self, can't be depressed. The true self is full of joy. It's perfect, ageless, and eternal. It was never born and will never die. It just is. That's why it said, "There was never a time I wasn't, and there will never be a time I won't be." Sometimes people ask, where did God come from? But that's the wrong question, because it's based on the idea that everything has a beginning and an end. The truth is, there's only that ecstatic consciousness, always has been, always will be. It's just what exists, and you are part of that. You might ask, well, if that's true, why don't I feel it? Why don't I experience that joy all the time? The answer is simple. Because you're distracted. You're too busy focusing on your thoughts, emotions, your body, and the world around you. You're staring at all of that instead of tuning into the deeper part of yourself. So, why did things end up this way? Why, if we're naturally full of joy, do we choose to focus on the things that bring us down? And why do we get caught up in all the stuff going on inside our minds? It's something we can all relate to, even though the stuff inside each of us is different. Your mind's thoughts and worries are different from someone else's, and even your own thoughts change from moment to moment. Think of it like the ocean. Oceanographers study the waves and can explain why they form the way they do. They can even use computer models to predict the behavior of each wave. You could ask artificial intelligence to predict how the waves will move if you want to go surfing. The waves depend on things like the depth of the ocean, the wind, and other forces that affect them. Well, thoughts are just like waves. Each thought you have has a cause. They're not special or unique. They happen for reasons just like the waves in the ocean. So what causes your thoughts? It's not complicated, even though it might seem like it. We don't need volumes of psychology books to figure it out. The reasons for your thoughts are the simplest things in the world, just like the forces that shape the waves in the ocean. Understanding that can help you see that your thoughts are not who you are. You are something far greater than the thoughts passing through your mind. I know where your thoughts come from. Every one of us has had experiences in life, and we keep having new ones all the time. These experiences come to us through our senses, and we process them inside ourselves. You don't really experience things outside of you. Everything happens inside. When you see something, hear something, or feel something, it's happening in your inner world. Your senses, like your eyes and ears, bring in information from the outside world and deliver it to your brain. This is why we have a nervous system and senses in the first place. If we were experiencing things outside, like standing out there, we wouldn't need sensors. Think of a computer. A computer needs sensors like a camera or microphone to pick up what's happening outside and turn it into digital messages that it can process. You work the same way. You have eyes, ears, a sense of touch, and other sensors to pick up what's happening in the world around you. Your body, which is made from the same stuff as the outside world, collects all the sights, sounds, and other sensations and converts them into nerve impulses. These impulses travel through your nervous system to your brain, which acts like the computer's CPU. Your brain gathers all these signals together and processes them, but you are still inside, experiencing everything through your mind. Here's an important point. Your brain is not the same as your mind. Some scientists think that your thoughts come from your brain, but that's not entirely true. The brain is part of your nervous system, and it helps process the signals from the outside world. But the mind operates on a higher level. Your thoughts are like ripples in water. Just as a leaf dropping into a pond causes ripples, your brain activity sends waves of energy to your mind. The mind receives these ripples of energy, which turn into thoughts. But your consciousness, the deeper part of you, is even further back. It's like you're watching these thoughts from a distance. So, you're inside, and what happens outside comes in through your senses, sometimes stimulating your mind. Everything in the world has its own unique nature and vibration. This is a teaching from Buddhism. What does it mean? Think of a rattlesnake and a butterfly. If a rattlesnake slithers by, it gives off a certain kind of vibration that's different from a butterfly fluttering around. The rattlesnake itself doesn't enter your body, but the feeling it creates does. The same goes for the butterfly. Its presence causes a much lighter, more peaceful sensation inside you. That's not your mind creating it. It's just the natural vibration of the world. In the same way, a storm feels different from a sunny day. A storm creates heavier, more intense vibrations, while a sunny day gives off calmer ones. That's the way it's supposed to be, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the real, natural way everything is. Each thing has its own unique vibration, and we experience that when it enters our inner world through our senses. So experiences come to you, and you live through them. That's the point of being here, to have experiences. A storm is an experience, a sunny day is an experience, seeing a rattlesnake is an experience, just like birth and death. Even when someone is rude to you or when someone tells you you're the most amazing person they've ever met, both are experiences. Each of these has its own kind of energy, its own vibration. Can you deal with that? For many of us, the answer is, no, I can't handle it all. I can only deal with certain things. When good things happen, we feel good. When the vibrations are positive, it's enjoyable, and we welcome those experiences. But when things feel heavy or negative, we tend to push back, saying, no, I don't want this. Now, think about this. From a spiritual perspective, is it right to say this vibration shouldn't exist, or is it more accurate to say it exists but I just can't handle it? Or perhaps the real goal is to say yes, it exists and I can handle it. That's the key. These experiences will pass through you. You still feel them, but the important part is not resisting them. You had the experience, and it made you more aware, wiser. Think of it this way. If you're going on a hike in the mountains where there are snakes, would you rather have a guide who has never seen a snake before, or a guide who has seen many snakes and knows how to handle them? You'd probably pick the experienced guide, right? So how do we gain that experience? By living through it ourselves. Every time you experience something, it enters the ocean of your consciousness. With each experience, you become a more experienced being. Maybe now you've seen a snake or a butterfly. But if you love the butterfly and get upset when it flies away, that means you haven't fully learned how to handle that experience. The more it happens, the more you start to realize butterflies come and go, and that's okay. You've become an experienced butterfly watcher. Isn't that the same thing that's happening in your life with every single event? The real question isn't, did you experience it? Of course you did. The deeper question is, can you handle it? Can you let it happen without getting caught up in the highs and lows? That's what matters. What does it mean to handle an experience? It means letting the experience fully come in and become part of your being. Imagine you see an amazing sunset and you feel like it touches your soul. You might even say, it touched me to the depth of my being. Those words describe exactly how it felt, like the beauty of the sunset reached deep inside of you. Those moments feel great, don't they? Or think about love. I love him so much. And when he hugged me, I just melted. I felt like I merged with him. That's what happens when you fully let an experience in. There's no resistance, nothing in the way, and the experience becomes whole and complete. It's an incredible feeling. Art can do that too. When you see a piece of art you love, it can move you deeply. But if you don't like it, it can have the opposite effect. See, it's about whether you're open to the experience or if you're in the way, resisting it. So, being able to handle life means letting all experiences come in without getting caught up or pulled out of your calm, centered state. You're not avoiding life or avoiding experiences. That idea of renouncing life is misunderstood. What you really renounce is what you can't handle, the things that disturb your peace. But if you can handle something, why would you need to avoid it? For example, if someone says something shocking, or even if they're running around naked, it wouldn't bother you if you're fully centered. It wouldn't pull you away from your inner peace. Think of how little kids are. They don't care if someone's dressed or not because they haven't learned to be distracted by it. You can experience all sorts of things, but they won't shake you if you're centered. So why renounce those things? The only reason people avoid certain experiences is because they can't handle them. But the real solution is learning how to let those experiences happen without losing your peace. The experience comes in, passes through you, and leaves you calm, content, and peaceful, just as you were before. Now, that's how life works. Things come in, and they pass through. But most of us aren't there yet. What's really happening is that experiences come in, and we react to them. Everything has its own vibration, just like the frequencies in the electromagnetic spectrum. Some people give off good vibes, while others give off bad vibes. You feel those vibes inside, right? The real question is, can you handle it? If you can handle it, it means you let the experience happen, whether it's joy, sadness, or even something as intense as death, and you remain centered. It passes through you, and you remain peaceful, undisturbed. That's what handling it truly means. What does it really mean when we say, I can't handle this? We've all said it at some point. It means something is happening. You're experiencing it, but deep down you don't want to. Your consciousness is aware of what's going on, but there's a part of you that resists the experience. You try to push it away because you don't want to deal with it. Now, when you say you can't handle something, it doesn't mean the experience didn't happen. It already did. The fact that you're feeling it means it's real. You can't make it disappear just because you don't want to feel it. You're experiencing it right now, and there's no way to undo that. The event has happened, and you can't stop that. What people do instead is they try to suppress the experience, and that's where psychology comes in. That's what Freud was talking about with suppression. What does it mean to suppress something? It means you use your inner willpower to push the experience away. Inside of you, you have the ability to push things away or hold on to them, just like you can with your hands in the physical world. Your willpower is like having hands inside your mind. You can choose to push something down or cling to it. It's a mental effort, a way of trying to control your inner world. Your willpower is the focused energy of your consciousness. Think of it like focusing sunlight through a magnifying glass. Normally, sunlight spreads everywhere, but when you focus it through a glass, it becomes so powerful it can burn things. In the same way, your will is focused consciousness. It's your ability to concentrate your inner energy on a specific point. This focused energy is powerful, and it's what we use to either face or push away experiences. Now, let's say something happens that you really don't like. Maybe it's a sound, a color, or a situation. What do? If you don't like it, normally you would try not to pay attention to it, but instead you end up focusing on it even more. If you can't stand the noise, you still listen to it. If you hate the color, you still look at it. You get pulled into it even though you don't want to, and it distracts you. Your consciousness focuses on that thing, and then you resist it, trying to push it away. What are you actually pushing away? You can't push away the event itself. It already happened. What you're pushing away is your experience of the event. You're trying to block how you feel about it. But where does that feeling go? That's where psychology comes in. All of psychology is about what happens when we suppress our experiences. This is also where yoga and spirituality meet psychology. Spirituality is about understanding that you are consciousness, the observer inside. But when you suppress something, you create what's called a samskara. A samskara is a pattern of energy that gets stuck inside you. It's like a memory or emotional blockage. Here's something important to understand. Energy never stays still. It's always moving. That's a basic law of physics. But when you try to push away an experience, you're blocking that natural flow of energy. It's like putting up a dam in front of a river. The energy is still there trying to move, but you've blocked it by suppressing the experience. Instead of letting it flow through you, you've trapped it inside and it stays there until you deal with it. So not being able to handle an experience means you resist it, and that resistance creates blockages inside you. Those blockages don't disappear. They stay with you until you learn to let the experience move through you without resisting it. What happens when you try to block an experience? The energy from that experience doesn't just disappear, it starts to circle around itself, right in front of the wall you put up. It keeps moving, but it stays in one place, cycling over and over. This is how energy seems to stay still, even though it's always moving. A circle is an amazing shape in the universe because it allows energy to stay in one spot while it's constantly moving. That's what a samskara is. It's a pattern of energy that you've stored inside of you, and it stays there until you finally let it go. It won't go away on its own. It'll come up again and again, maybe in your dreams or when someone says something that reminds you of it. It's like how Freud talked about childhood experiences. Maybe your mom took your favorite blanket away too soon when you were a kid, and now, even at 67 years old, that memory and feeling still linger inside. High school memories? Those are still in there too. Something your siblings said or did, or what happened during your parents' divorce. It's all still inside. You might think you've gotten rid of it, but you haven't. So how do you finally get rid of it? You have to let it pass through. That's the only way. You can't force it away or ignore it. You have to let it come in, feel it, and then let it leave. It's like the energy is just moving through you. It arrives, you experience it, and then you say, goodbye. You still gain the wisdom from the experience, and it still adds to who you are, but it doesn't get stuck inside you. But here's the thing. Most of us hold on to every single thing that has ever bothered us in our entire lives, don't we? Even the small stuff. Like maybe the driver in front of you didn't use their blinker, and you almost hit them. You spend the rest of the day talking about it, and maybe even dream about it for a couple of nights. Or maybe you say hi to someone and they don't respond. That stays with you for a while, and you start thinking, why didn't they answer? Are they mad at me? You can't let it go. And it's not just the big things. These tiny things add up too. Go to a high school reunion and see the people you knew years ago. You might have been out of high school for 30 years, but all those old feelings will come right back up. The people you liked, you'll still want to be around them. The people you didn't like, you'll still want to avoid them. Even though they've changed and you've changed, it's like you're still carrying those feelings from the past. Even things they said to you once, decades ago, will come flooding back. Pay attention to that. This is why your mind says the things it says. It's filled with all these experiences that you've held on to, circling around inside of you. That's what makes your mind what it is. All those old thoughts, feelings, and experiences stay with you until you finally let them go. So all these emotions and experiences are stored inside you. Here's the big question. If you keep storing everything that has ever upset you inside, how do you think it feels inside? Disturbed, right? And it really is. You might say, no, I'm not always upset. But that's because you try so hard to avoid situations or people that trigger these feelings. You surround yourself with things and people that don't touch the painful parts. But what happens when you're with someone who always triggers those emotions? You think, I can't be around them, they always bring up my issues. This shows that you understand what's happening inside, even if you don't always want to deal with it. You might say, I'd rather keep my stuff inside than deal with someone who triggers it. But take a moment, breathe, and now you start to understand spiritual growth. You've been storing all these feelings and memories inside you. And because of that, something else is happening. There's an energy, often called Shakti, that's always inside you. This energy naturally wants to rise up, but it's blocked. You don't need a special awakening for this energy. It's already there, constantly trying to move upward. Think of it like a dam blocking a river. For example, when the Hoover Dam was built, it stopped the Colorado River. But the river never stops trying to push through the dam. In the same way, this Shakti energy is always trying to rise, but it's blocked by the things you've stored inside. Every time the energy tries to rise, you push it back down, saying, no, I don't want to deal with this right now. Then, when you feel a bit better, you think everything's okay, but it's not. You've just pushed that energy back down again. Your mind, in fact, is trying to help. It talks to you, bringing up thoughts related to the energy that's stuck. Just like you talk to friends about what's bothering you, your mind is trying to release this blocked energy by making you think about it. That's why you keep thinking the same things, or why past trauma stays on your mind. It's like PTSD. When someone has been through something traumatic, their whole being gets stuck on it. The mind keeps bringing it up, not to punish you, but to try to release the stored energy. If you don't let it out during the day, it may come out in your dreams at night. When you understand how spirituality and psychology are connected, everything makes more sense. Your mind keeps talking because it's trying to help release what's blocked inside. This is also why you like certain things and avoid others, because you prefer things that don't touch the stored stuff inside you. Oh wow, I feel amazing when I'm with him. We're so perfect together. Well, let's see how long that lasts. Because eventually something's going to come up, right? Has anyone ever had a completely perfect relationship for more than a few moments? It might seem funny, but it's not so funny when real life kicks in. What happens next is that the emotions and issues you've stored inside start coming up, and you're fine as long as things are going smoothly. But when life brings new challenges, they hit the stuff you've been holding inside. So what do? We often try to control or manipulate the people in our lives so that they match what's stored inside us, or at least so they don't trigger those buried feelings. When things line up with how we feel inside, we feel good. But when they don't, it's like everything falls apart. And when it really doesn't line up, when it touches those deeper issues, it can feel overwhelming and we freak out. People often say, I feel this knot in my stomach, my heart aches so much. Of course it does. The painful stuff you stored away is being pushed up to the surface, and it feels awful because you stored things down there that hurt. So when those old feelings come back up, it's going to be painful. But what's the real answer? It's not about controlling the mind. It's about letting go of those stored emotions. Controlling your mind isn't the same as spiritual growth. Controlling the mind is like saying, I'm strong enough to suppress these feelings that want to come up on their own. I'll work hard to make sure they don't bother me. I know, because that's what I tried to do in the beginning. But then I started asking, why is this stuff even coming up in the first place? Why am I fighting it? Why don't I look deeper and find out why it's happening? And when you do that, you discover all this emotional baggage that's been stored down there. So why not get rid of it? Yes, it's hard, but it's worth it. When you finally clear out all that emotional garbage, there's nothing left to push up and disturb you. And then something amazing happens. The Shakti energy, this natural spiritual energy, rises. That's when you begin to feel incredible, like wave after wave of joy washing over you. As one spiritual master wrote, "Oh, what have you done to me? Wave upon wave of ecstasy fills me day and night, joy after joy." That's what it feels like when there's no emotional blockage anymore. But when there's still stuff blocking you, you feel that heaviness. Those old emotions start coming into your mind and heart, and you have to work hard just to feel okay. It's like the story from Genesis. You have to struggle and control everything around you just to feel some joy. You can only be happy when everything in life lines up perfectly, and when things do line up just right, you feel open and joyful. But other times, you close up, and it's not something you consciously choose. It just happens. You might wonder, was it love at first sight? It's not something you plan or force, like saying, next person I meet, I'll fall in love instantly. It doesn't work that way. You can't control when or how your heart opens. It's all tied to the stuff you have inside. Suddenly you meet someone and boom, your heart opens. It's not about science like physics or chemistry. It's about something deeper, old emotional scars moving around inside you. Now, have you noticed that you can act like a totally different person depending on the situation or the people you're around? Sometimes you even feel like a different person when you're with the same person at different times. Think about relationships, marriage, divorce, love, hate. It's all part of the cycle of emotions stored inside. Sometimes everything lines up and you feel open and it's wonderful. Other times it doesn't line up so well and things don't feel good. And then there are times when everything lines up perfectly to hit those deep emotional scars and it becomes unbearable. You think, I used to love this person, but now I can't stand being around them. You feel trapped and don't know why. You might convince yourself, I can handle this, but deep down you're just pushing those feelings further inside. Over time, the pressure builds up, and you go from tolerating the person to not being able to tolerate them at all. Does this sound familiar? I'm sure it does. That's exactly what's happening inside you. Now you understand why your thoughts and feelings seem to change so much. You might spend your entire life struggling with people and situations, trying to make everything feel okay. But the truth is, you'll never truly feel okay if you keep doing that. You might cope, but coping is just a way of managing the problem without actually solving it. Psychology uses the word cope, but to someone on a spiritual path, that's not good enough. Coping means, I'll keep this emotional baggage inside me, but I'll learn to live with it. That's not the answer. What if, instead of constantly trying to control everything and everyone around you to feel okay, you put that same effort into cleaning up your inner self? If you clear out those old emotions, you won't have to control everything anymore. You can be at peace, even with people who don't like you. You can even love people who don't treat you well. Remember, Christ said, love your enemies. He was teaching the same spiritual truths. There's a line in the Bible that says, it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say, resist not evil. Why? Because if you don't resist, it will pass through you. But if you fight it, that negative energy stays stuck inside you. Think of it like a dog walking past you. If you try to keep it at bay, you'll be fighting it forever. But if you just let it pass, it moves on and doesn't bother you. Everything can pass through you like that, and the great saints understood this. They let everything pass through them, good or bad, and nothing stuck. You have the ability to do this too, but not with all that emotional baggage stuck inside you. Your spiritual journey isn't about manipulating life to fit what's comfortable for you. Sure, you'll still try to do that because it's human nature, but you also need to work on letting go of the emotional clutter inside. Once you start letting go, you'll see that it actually works. Letting go allows you to be free, no matter what's happening around you. What do you do when something unpleasant comes up? Well, you have a few options. You can push it back down and try to ignore it, or you can manipulate your surroundings to avoid situations that trigger it. But good luck with that. It's not a long-term solution. Or you can decide, I can handle this now. I couldn't deal with it before, but I'm ready to handle it today. Maybe something happened years ago, like your parents getting divorced, and back then it was too much for you to deal with. But now, as an adult, you can face it. You don't have to avoid talking to your mom forever because of it. What does that look like? It means you go home, visit your mom, and let those old emotions come up. When you feel those emotions rising, letting go means saying to yourself, I want this to come up. I don't want to carry this around anymore. I don't want to live the rest of my life feeling messed up because I couldn't handle situations from my past. I'm ready to let them go. But let's be honest, letting go of the big stuff won't happen overnight. You can't expect to let go of something huge, like the pain from your parents' divorce, if you're still struggling to let go of small things, like the weather. Think about it. How often do you complain about the heat? Oh my gosh, it's so hot. I can't stand it. You go from your air-conditioned car to your air-conditioned house, and still you complain about how unbearable the heat is. You get worked up over something like that, and all that frustration gets stored inside you. So if you can't handle something as simple as the weather, what about the driver in front of you who's going too slow? Or what someone said, or didn't say, or even what you thought they might say? All these little things bother you because you haven't learned to handle them. What should you do instead? Don't just shove these feelings back down or try to control everything around you. Start practicing how to handle things as they come up. Just like learning a new skill, whether it's playing the piano or a sport, you need practice. You won't be great at it right away. And guess what? Most people aren't very good at letting go, especially at first. But if you practice, you'll get better. Some of you are already improving because you're working with these teachings, so start small. Work on letting go of the little things first, and eventually you'll get stronger at handling the bigger stuff. The more you practice, the easier it will become. If you're not good at a sport, you won't improve unless you practice. It's the same with any skill. Even if you know how to play the guitar but don't practice, you'll get worse at it. The same thing applies to letting go. If you can't let go of small things, like being upset over the weather, or something someone said, or a bad driver, you need to practice. For example, when you think, "Why didn't he use his blinker?" Instead of yelling or honking your horn, just let it go. What are you letting go of? You're letting go of the fact that it bothered you, that it triggered something inside you and made you uncomfortable. The key is learning to be okay with feeling uncomfortable. Think about athletes like those in the Olympics. They train for years, pushing themselves day and night, lifting weights, practicing their skills. Do you think they feel good all the time? No way. Boxers, for example, go through a lot of pain to get ready for a match, but they endure it because they know the pain is part of the process. No pain, no gain. It's the same with the emotional or mental stuff we carry inside. When something painful happens, it gets stored within you, and when it comes back up, it's going to hurt. So what do? You learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yes, feeling uncomfortable is tough, but it's a lower level experience. You can learn to be okay with it. The idea is to let things pass through you, just like stepping aside to avoid a bull charging at you. Don't stand in its way, let it go through. You don't need to resist. Now, how do you practice letting go? First, admit you're not good at it, then start practicing. I know it's not easy, but the more you practice, the better you'll get. And life gives you plenty of opportunities to practice, not just every day, but every hour, even every minute. Little things will always come up, whether triggered by something outside or by your own mind generating problems. Yes or no? Right, let them go. So how do you let go? Don't resist. And how do you stop resisting? Just relax. It's really that simple. You resist because you don't like what's happening. Let it go. You might think, "Oh my God, I feel this way and it's uncomfortable." Okay, so what? Open your hands and release it. If you just let go, it will pass through you. Take a moment and try to let go. Don't push the uncomfortable feelings back down just because they're hard to deal with. The truth is, you're not used to feeling uncomfortable, and until you get used to it, you'll always struggle. But the moment you learn how to deal with discomfort, it won't bother you as much anymore. For example, you might feel overwhelmed by something like a divorce. Why do people stay stuck on it? They keep thinking about it, reliving the memories. They drive past a restaurant they used to visit with their ex and think, "Oh no, I can't stay in this town anymore." So they move. But if you keep running away from things, you'll always have to keep moving. Or you can practice letting go. Think of it like a game, an internal challenge. Ask yourself, can I handle this? Can I let go of this feeling without pushing it down? Start with small things. Don't try to tackle the big stuff right away. It's like learning to play the guitar. First, you practice basic scales. Eventually, you can get better. Then, as you get better, you can play more difficult pieces. It's the same with letting go. Each time you practice, you get better at it. And one day, you'll look back and think, "Wow, it really works." Of course it works. People from all over the world share their experiences, saying things like, "My life has completely changed. I realized I don't have to hold on to all this stuff. I can just let it go." Some even say, "I was about to get divorced, but now we're doing great. I used to hate my job, and now I'm fine with it. My boss criticizes me, and now I just let it go. No big deal." And suddenly you can keep your job, your relationships, and your peace of mind. Isn't that amazing? All you did was let go of the resistance you built inside yourself. And when you let go, you'll start to feel a new kind of energy, something positive. It feels different, and you'll start thinking, "Wow, this feels good. It's worth it." It's like the pain women go through during childbirth. Despite the pain, it's worth it. And this practice of letting go is even more worth it because it opens you up to a better way of living. When you're always open and never have to close yourself off, life changes completely. And here's the best part. It doesn't just benefit you. It benefits everyone you interact with. Because when you stop holding onto your stuff, you stop pushing it onto others. You're no longer making their lives harder by pushing their stuff back onto them. Instead, you become like a beacon of light. You don't have to try to help people. They'll feel it just by being around you. You're no longer resisting or manipulating the energy around you. Instead, that energy flows through you and transforms into something better. It comes into you and goes up. You change everybody. You change every single thing. Just your existence changes everything. You're a very great being. Work on these things. Thank you for listening.